Good evening, everyone. We are going to be looking at A Child's History of the World, Chapter 40. Title of the chapter is Barbarian Invaders. But Rome, with the Roman Empire, had had its day. The empire had risen as high as it could. It was Rome's turn to fall. It was Rome's turn to be conquered. But you cannot guess what people were to do the conquering and to be the next in power. For centuries, there had been Germanic tribes living on the northern borders of the Roman Empire. Every now and then, they tried to cross over the border into Roman lands, and the Romans had to be constantly fighting them to keep them back where they belonged. Julius Caesar had fought with them, so had Marcus Aurelius, and so had Constantine. The Romans called these people barbarians, which is what they called all the people who were not Roman. I guess that means we'd be barbarians too. The Romans believed that all barbarians were fierce and warlike. Many of these Germanic people had light hair and blue eyes. That is, they were what we call blonde. Oh dear, I guess that means my youngest is a barbarian. And my oldest. The Greeks and Romans and other people who lived around the Mediterranean Sea had dark hair and dark eyes. They were what we called brunettes. Maybe we're all Greek and Roman. Brown hair, brunette. Although some of the Germanic people had moved into the Roman Empire, many lived in sparsely populated areas, not in cities. They lived in huts made of wood, sometimes of branches woven together like a basket. The women raised vegetables and took care of the cows and horses. The men did the hunting and fighting and blacksmithing. Blacksmithing was very important, for the blacksmiths made the swords and spears with which they fought and the tools with which they worked. That is why the name Smith was so honored among them. When the men went to battle, they wore the heads of animals they had killed, an ox's head, horns and all, or the head of a wolf or bear or fox. This was to make themselves look fierce and to frighten their enemies. Excuse me. Bravery was the chief thing the men thought good. A man might lie, he might steal, he might even commit murder, but if he was a brave warrior, he was called a good man. Pardon me. The Germanic tribes did not have a king. They elected their chiefs, and of course they always chose the man who was the strongest and the bravest. But he could not make his son ruler after him. He was more like a president than a king. These northern people had an entirely different set of gods from those of Greece and Rome. Their chief god, as you might guess, was the god of war, and they called him Woden. Woden was also the god of the sky. He was like the two Greek gods Zeus and Ares put together. Woden was supposed to live in a wonderful palace in the sky called Valhalla, and many tales are told of the wonderful things he did and of the adventures he had. Wednesday, which was called Woden's Day, is named after him. That is why there is a letter D in the word, although we don't pronounce it. It's like Wednesday. After Woden, Thor was the next most important god. He was the god of thunder and lightning, and he carried a hammer with which he fought great giants who lived in the far-off, cold lands and were called ice giants. Thursday, which was once Thor's day, is named after him. Another god was named Tiu, and from his name we get Tuesday, and another, Freya, from where we get Friday. So that 4 out of 7 of our days are named after the Germanic gods. Of the other days of the week, Sunday and Monday, of course, are named after the sun and moon, and Saturday is named after a Roman god, Saturn. About the year 400 AD, these northern neighbors were becoming particularly troublesome to the Romans. They began to push their way down into the northern part of the Roman Empire, and after a few years the Romans could hold them back no longer. 2 of these Germanic tribes went over into Britain, and the Romans who were living there found it wisest to get out, go back to Rome, and leave the country and its native people to the invaders. These tribes who settled in Britain were known as Angles and Saxons. So the country came to be called the land of the Angles, or for short, Angleland. After the words Angleland was said over for many years, they became England, which is what we call the country today. The people of England are still known by the full name Anglo-Saxons, and this is the name by which we call anyone descended from these tribes of Angles and Saxons who settled in Britain around 400 AD. Another tribe called the Vandals went into Gaul. Gaul is where France is now. Then they kept on down into Spain, stealing, smashing, burning, and destroying. They crossed over by boat into North Africa. They damaged or destroyed everything they came upon. So today, when anyone damages or destroys property wickedly, we call them vandals. If you cut up your desk, tear your book, or scratch your name on walls or fences, you too are a vandal. A tribe called the Franks followed the Vandals into Gaul, and there they stayed, giving the name France to that country. The people north of Italy were the Goths. They had their leader by the name of Alaric. Alaric and his Goths crossed over the mountains into Italy and robbed or destroyed everything of value they could lay their hands on. They then entered Rome and carried away whatever they wanted, and the Romans could not stop them. But the worst was yet to come. What's worse is I can't get the page to turn. Oh, for the love. You're all waiting on bated breath for me to tell you that's the end of chapter 40. Ta-ta for now.